Your show's rubbish.
Hi everyone. This is the Trout Spinners podcast. I am your host as always, Mr. Miles D. Purnell.
Well, I just say, I like your phrasing. I am your host. No, you are one host of partnership.
I would say that.
But yes, Mars is. Actually, I'm Gary.
Gary Forrestal, to give him his full and proper name. Middle name unknown.
Yeah. It's good banter, isn't it? Good chemistry. We were talking in the week actually about do we lose the dynamic between us over Skype? And I said no, I don't think we do. Mars thinks we do. It does a bit, but I think one thing that does happen, we do sometimes talk over each other, or sometimes Mars will say something and I don't quite catch the end of what he says, so I just say something else. So if that happens, it's because of Skype, but we do have a good dynamic, I promise. We love each other.
I think people are quite compassionate and quite empathetic to the current circumstances with the technical situation. So apologies for any audio issues last week. Won't happen again.
So Mars, what is this? What are we doing?
Thanks for asking. The Trout Spinners is a retrospective of the Ricky Gervais show XFM tapes recorded between the years of 2002 and 2005, 4, something like that.
4 up to what we're doing, up to season 4, yeah.
Yeah, and then after that,
they did a couple on Radio 5 in 2005. So this one was recorded in 2002, near the end of 2002. Miles is just in one moment is going to tell you the exact day because he likes to do that. He's very organised. I would just happily say it's 2002 and get on with it, but Miles doesn't want that. So it's the Trout Spinners. It's a retrospective about the Ricky Gervais show on XFM, and I think that I speak for Miles when I say it's quite an important part of our lives, and we started this podcast because we realised it's an important part of a lot of people's lives. So anyway, I don't want to get too profound early on, but it's all right. But yeah, we are doing this week episode 17, is it?
Yeah, that's right. Season 2, episode 17. This was originally recorded on the 14th of December 2002. Gary, I'll ask you every week, what were you doing on the 14th of December 2002? Something more interesting this time, please.
Well, let me see. At that stage, I was crying every other day.
Yep.
So I don't know if it was one of the crying days where I cried all day or one of the normal.
Happy memories then.
Basically, I think actually at that time I was back from Birmingham Uni, and I was applying for a job in Asda. I haven't got it yet.
The infamous Asda job, the one service industry job you've had.
Yeah, I've got quite an interesting story about that, but I'm not going to tell it this week. But I think I've told it before. But
you have told it before. The fish counter.
Yeah, the fish. Well, yeah,
anyway.
But so I was. But that's what you do when you're 17. I think I was 18. So I was working out what I wanted to do in life, and I was just doing what everyone does and kind of getting a job in Asda. It was quite hellish. I'll say that. It is quite hellish. So, but cheap shop.
And if anyone listening is working at Asda, bloody good job.
No. Hang on. I'm not saying working for Asda is a bad job. I'm saying
I know what you're saying.
That specific
I know what you're saying. Trust me, I know what you're saying.
Specific managers that I had made it absolute hell. Actually, another story that I didn't tell. This is another story.
Should we do a feature? Oh, Gary's anecdotes. Go.
Oh, okay. I don't want it to become a feature, but it's an occasional feature. But yeah, this woman came through. I looked very young when I was young. This woman was coming through the till, and she was chatting to me. She was really friendly. She was like, "Oh, my son's your age. My son's this." She was chatting to me the whole time. Some customers did, but not many. Anyway, she gave me at the end, instead of paying money, she gave me these vouchers. Usually you get one voucher. Most customers have one voucher. She had a massive bunch of vouchers.
School vouchers?
No, they were like vouchers for just you could use in Asda. They were just vouchers.
Yeah.
And I was like, my head should have been like, what? That's not right. But I just took them, and she got into my mind because I was really friendly with her. I just took them, and the next day I was called into the manager's office, and he said, Gary, we found all these have been through your till. They're all fake, and I kind of had a bit of a dressing down. Like, he was like, you really should be checking if it's more than one voucher. I was like, oh yeah, I'm sorry, I just didn't realise, because I was young then. Now I'd think, of course,
But
that's
also your mind's on different things as well.
yeah. She was very, very clever. She was very clever. She got me into that thing where she's being really friendly. But basically, she was a fraudster. She was a fraudster. But actually, that I was kind of like that. That made my trust in humanity and people in general go down for many years. Probably still to this day, because that happened. Because she built into my trust, and then I was stupid to take all. She had about 200 quid's worth of shopping, and she knew she targeted my till because I looked about 11. So I was the youngest and most impressionable, and it worked. And I was so frustrated afterwards that it worked. But anyway, that's
I don't think
I'm not working at Asda anymore.
I don't think that's going to be a regular feature. I feel a bit down after that story. No?
Sorry, but it's anyway.
I've lost 90 quid that way though when I was working at Cafe Nero. Some con artist did exactly the same thing. He was like, he paid with a whole load of money, and then he was doing the whole back and forth thing, like, no, you gave me a 20. Here's a 10. Yeah, but if I give you the 10, here's a 15. And I ended up losing the company, and obviously didn't give a shit because it's Cafe Nero and they make loads of money, mate. And
could I just say, I just want to interject. I know you. I know when that was found out, and when someone said, you've lost money, my God, you would have cared. You would have been like,
at the time, yeah.
Yeah, but
now.
Because you're very because I cared.
I am scared of. I'm scared. Honestly, these lockdown measures. The reason I'm so frustrated by them is because I think government should enforce policy, and I think they should change it. I'm not getting political, by the way. I'm scared of authority, and I think everyone else should be too. Just for this period of time, whilst we're kind of trying to avoid that second spike.
I don't think we should go too far down this road.
I'm not. That's it. That's all I had to say.
I'll just say we should never be scared of authority. We should be respectful of authority.
Okay, that's the word. That's the word.
Yeah, so basically, D-Trout spinners presented by a couple of gullible trats who lost companies' money.
Karl is away again today, and Claire Sturgess is pushing the buttons in his absence. He's in Manchester. Manchester's good in it. It's better than London. Manchester's better. Have you ever been to Manchester?
Yes, I've been to Old Trafford.
Oh.
Seen Manchester United play Sheffield Wednesday.
Yeah. Oh. So yeah, Claire Sturgess is in. Now, I know a lot of people are like, I can't be bothered with the Claire Sturgess episode. They're rubbish. They're filler. They will skip them. And in fact, the only ones I have skipped really, and I have listened to them since, but like the Ian Canfield ones, I don't really. Well, he only did one, didn't he?
He only did one, and actually, I can't. They talk about a subject that we don't really like talking about, really, but for quite a long period of the podcast. And actually, I really don't like the Ian Canfield one. But yeah, as you say, a lot of people skip the Claire ones. I would say this, like, if all of them were with Claire, or if Claire was in every other week, yeah, it wouldn't be. It's not the same. It's not the same without Karl. It's not the same show. So this podcast will probably be a bit shorter. We're actually going to break it up into two parts, but it's still a good show. But I'm pleased over the 3 or 4 years they do it. So Claire only sits in 5 or 6 times. So that's about enough. If it was any more than that, yeah, I would start skipping as well. But they are actually interesting because each time Claire comes in, except for one time where she comes in twice in a row, each time Claire comes in, it's been quite a while since she came in before. And like they're kind of, I think we both noticed last time, they're both a bit hyper, aren't they? Like they're different.
Schoolboys.
It makes for interesting listening. But yeah, if they were all with Claire, of course this podcast would not be something special because Karl is something you can't ever replicate. So it's a good show. We've got stuff to say about it.
Actually, just to get us actually onto the discussion, then, like Steve at one point says, Karl will often come between us, and it's like, and they compare their relationship to taken their son out on a
Yeah.
I can't remember, on like a bank holiday or something, and it's like it causes a rift in the relationship. And I've never ever thought of it that way. You know, if anything, Karl and Steve, they wind each other up, and Ricky stokes the fire.
Yeah, but at the same time, they're not just three people who wind each other up. They've got a very close bond during this period. Now the bonds will have loosened, but they were very close. They were close, and so I know what Steve means. It just means like a family in some sense. But there's I can't remember exactly what Steve says, but there's another point where Steve kind of criticizes Karl. And again, this happened last time when Claire was in. Ricky stepped in to defend him. Now, he only does that. He only says those nice, sweet things when Karl isn't there. He never... He might say a jokingly nice thing, but he doesn't protect Karl in that way. But when Steve has a go at him during this episode, Ricky steps in. And he only does that when Claire's in. He can't. It's like he can't do it in front of Karl. He can't be kind of sweet and protective. But as soon as Karl's not there, he is quite protective. Whereas Steve kind of would just bash Karl. And I think that's interesting. We often say, how would they get on now? Do they speak now? We don't know. But
It's a nice thought, though, isn't it? You do wonder this.
Yeah, there is there's certainly a deep connection between Ricky and Karl, because he is protective over him, but he doesn't protect him when he's there. He only protects him when Claire's sitting in. So anyway, it happened again this episode. So
it makes me laugh. The thought of this happened with like when they were Ricky was trying to be sick on his leg, and then he left because he had a good feature, and then just the thought of Steve and Karl in a pub on their own, that makes me laugh, because I've got friends like that who I kind of half know, because I don't think at that time like Karl and Steve would have just gone out leisurely as friends, you know, just for a pint or a couple of pints. But I've got
even Ricky and Steve didn't go out like that.
But at least Ricky and Steve, they would have had other things to talk about. Like they would have been talking about like their creative. I see their relationship more so as, at least they had that in common, the fact that they were writing together and doing sketches and stuff like that. Whereas with Steve and Karl, there's no reason for them to be together. And I've got friends like that who I kind of half know, or work friends who I kind of half know, and maybe Gary Forrest still over there. But sometimes maybe when you're sitting on a bench and you're waiting for other people to turn up, people who you know better, but you're with someone who you kind of half know, and you've really got to struggle for things to talk about. And that's how I imagine like Steve and Karl being like, because it also, me and you sit outside when we go to the pub, because I smoke. No one else does. But
well, it's smooth, mate. Go on.
But I like the freedom of being outside. I just think there's something different when you're inside. I don't know. That's a bit of a tangent. But
Mars and I have sat outside on literally the coldest. One time there was a blizzard, snow blizzard. I think do you remember it was near St. Patrick's Day? Was that the one? And there's
our favourite holiday.
Yeah, but it was. We always sit outside, and yeah, I prefer sitting outside as well. But I think Karl and that's an interesting point. What would Karl and Steve have been like when Ricky isn't there? Because Ricky is. I have friends who play this role. I've played this role in my life. Ricky is a catalyst for two people that aren't like each other to come together, because they would never have come together and talked at all. As you're right about that, unless Ricky had kind of brought them together. But I do think that there are some moments between Steve and Karl on the show where Karl is quite respectful, and he often says, "What do you think about that, Steve?" Or "Steve, should we do this? What do you think, Steve?" Like sometimes he doesn't, and he jokes about it.
That's still work related.
No, I know, but I'm just saying that they have more of a cordial relationship than you'd probably think. But I think Yusuf made the point last week that he saw that part of the difference being in class, and the similarity between Ricky and Karl, that they're both kind of working class backgrounds, which is true. Steve is more middle class. I think that's fair to say. He would not shy away from that. He is just more middle class, and I think Yusuf's point last week is relevant, because that's probably why they wouldn't get on.
This is very true, actually. We're talking about class, and at one point towards the end of the episode, before they got onto Das Freaken Goggle-Eye, which I'm sure we'll get to. I'm sure we'll get to in our favourite quotes. But they talk about Ricky not getting the tube. He's too rich for that. And Ricky goes, I never did. I always thought it was beneath me.
Yeah,
And
Ricky's joking there. Ricky didn't get the tube because he couldn't afford it at the time, and then he got used to sort of running everywhere, and he liked to run.
I don't think that's true. I think there's some sort of
Ricky. No, not like Ricky. Ricky's very good at joking that he's arrogant. Now he is arrogant, but I never think he saw the tube as beneath him. Whereas Steve would always use the tube, I think, because he's kind of he would see walking as beneath him.
But no, but that's what I mean about Steve. Like Steve is someone that's obviously really, really worked hard. He was a young graduate. He's moved to like the big city, however you want to put it. And he wants the opportunities that other people are getting it. And even at that time, when this was a local radio station, there is a little bit of a delineation between the two, whereby Ricky seemingly like falled into all of these positions that are like really like responsible. And a little bit of him must have been like, how has he got that when I've worked really fucking hard? In the same way that I've been frustrated at times when I've seen friends who have got jobs just out of sheer nepotism.
Yeah, I don't like nepotism, but Ricky never got a job because of nepotism. So,
no, I know.
But he did fall in. No, I think Steve often sort of jokes, like he says, and he's half joking, he's half serious. He says, he's almost like, you're going to get us fired from this. This is, you don't care about this show, but this is like income for me. And I think that's part of it. Like Ricky had earned money from the 11 o'clock show that Steve hadn't earned. So Ricky pissed about more, and his attitude always was like with The Office and things, which we talk about before. It's like, we go in there, we pitch it. If they want it, they want it. If they want it different, we don't. We just say no, and that's quite a powerful position to be in. Whereas Steve admits he would have said yes to anything almost to get on. He wouldn't now because he's successful. I think that just comes from Ricky having had some more success before, and Steve. Because to be fair, at the beginning, Ricky gave Steve everything he had, like, because Steve only made The Office and had the career he's had because he happened to, be picked by Ricky to kind of be on the show with him.
But that was the first. Apparently that's how they met. If there's a really good, actually, it's called Comedy Connections on BBC. You'll be able to watch it on YouTube. It's really good, and it talks about how they meet and stuff. I'll put a link into the bio if I can find it. But they said, the only Stephen was like the first. It was the first CV and he picked up. Ricky actually, in laziness, called him up.
He couldn't be bothered to look at two CVs, and that's kind of, but that's fate, and we got from that the most magical thing ever. Because
do you believe? This is a bit of a side point. Do you believe in like fate and all that sort of stuff? The fact that
no.
Some things are like meant to be. But it's interesting, isn't it, to speculate on?
I don't, but there are incredible coincidences that happen, and that's one of them. I don't believe in fate as a sort of force that's acting upon us that's separate to, it's just luck, and that's how I see it. If he hadn't picked Steve's, if he picked someone else's, if another person happened to be top on that part, we would have got CD Boss. CD Boss would have been out, but it just would have been it would have just been another little sketch. It would have been like his work on the 11 o'clock show. It would have been funny, but like he would have had that because it was kind of his thing originally. But never have had The Office. We wouldn't have had the podcast. So I'm very, very thankful that it was his thing. And I think sometimes to myself, even though I don't believe in fate, I think bloody hell, that was lucky, wasn't it? We got.
I just love. I don't know. I've got this thing about. I love finding out about famous people or people I respect or influencers that I have, and how they got in and how they broke into the industry, as it were. Like, I'm fascinated by these stories because everyone's story is completely different, and entertainment industry is like notoriously like challenging and competitive, and you really have to stand out. So. It's amazing that we had those years of Ricky and Steve, regardless of what's happened since and whatever you think about, even Fight With My Family or Afterlife, that we got this time because it's time you're not going to get back, and it's got a legacy. Almost.
Yeah, it's quite profound in a way, but And Mars, I agree with what you're saying, but Mars kind of speaks as someone like me. Mars has done more things than I've done, but we're speaking. It's interesting. I find it interesting how people got into sort of show business. We speak as people on the outside still, pretty much, but it wouldn't be a lie to say that we are trying to kind of break into the industry. And actually, we do another podcast, Dutch Travellers. We kind of talk more about that and things. But we are outsiders. I'm not boasting, but we would like to be in the industry. So it's interesting. But I often think of those days and think that would never happen now, would it? Like the avenues into the industry are there's so many more avenues into the industry than there was in 1998 when they met. But in 1998, if you got into the industry, you were properly in. Whereas there's so many avenues now that you kind of get a bit involved, and we do bits of things, and it's very hard to get properly in. But there's so many avenues. It wouldn't have happened like that now. Steve would have applied for, Steve wouldn't have applied to XFM. He would have sent in some scripts to places and things like that.
Well, he was on the BBC like a productions trainee scheme, I think.
Yeah, but I think that in those days, if a producer, if Ricky had a lot of influence. So Ricky wasn't in charge of the station, but if Ricky said to Andrew Phillips or whoever was in charge in '98 or whenever they met, oh yeah, I want this guy, they'll just go yeah. Whereas now, there's so many barriers and hurdles to get into a radio show. So many people, you need a proper interview, you'd need CRB checks. It's easier, but it's harder to get in a way. Like,
I also think like at that time, like when I was growing up in Ipswich, and I was watching, shows like that, the big kind of you've made it is when you've been on telly, So we were watching things like obviously loads of Saturday night telly, but like Jonathan Ross, and I was a big fan of Pop World with Simon Amstell, and TV was like that was the gatekeeper, whereas now there's no gatekeeper. You can broadcast however you want to broadcast, and I don't know, it's not as elitist as it was, but it kind of detracts from like how special it was when you made it, because something like The Office being made, you can imagine if that was made, if The Office never happened and someone did The Office now, you'd have like loads of people who were doing The Office, or loads of people had the same idea, and a lot of them would have got lost in the murk, and maybe one of them would have floated to the surface, or two of them would have, but they would have been flavour of the month, and
they wouldn't. I just really want to make this point. They wouldn't do it as a 6-part series. It would appear as clips on YouTube. It's different, and you're right. There's these days, back then, far more people now make it in some way into the industry, but they're kind of poking their head in and they're not fully into the industry. Whereas back in those days, Ricky picked up Steve's CV and Steve was then in the industry, and then they had to work on the script and everything, which they did, but Steve was kind of in the industry. He was on radio. Whereas nowadays you're right, it's a saturation point, it's like everyone's sort of had their 5 minutes of fame and things. So, but we're lucky in a sense, because this would never have been possible 20 years ago, this podcast. There's no such thing as podcasts, whereas now I think people get a lot from them. But shall we... I've got
a few more things.
Okay, I've got some things as well.
British Comedy Awards were like a big thing. Do you remember the British Comedy Awards? Because I was watching some kind person on online has put up a Google Drive link with literally, it's like a bounty of Ricky, Steve and Karl material on there. It's so great. I'll have to send you a link to it.
Yeah,
but they were being quite sort of disparaging about the Comedy Awards.
Oh,
and
yeah.
They're sort of saying like, look at this shit, look at this.
Yeah, Ricky's even disparaging about BAFTAs, and Ricky does that really well. Like, I know we say he's arrogant now, and it goes too far, but like I love Ricky's speeches when he won a BAFTA, or it might have been a British Comedy Award, quite a few years into his career, and he was in by video link, just lying in bed.
Yeah.
And he had.
I remember that.
The camera panned out, and he had like his Golden Globes and things like that. He's like, "This is shit." I can't remember what he says, but he's like, This is like, he said, like, you're all in the audience. You're like, you're really excited. You hope you win. Literally don't give a shit. And yeah, it's very funny.
But
the
it was
British comedy,
It was charming back then, wasn't it? That sort of.
yeah, it was pitched perfectly.
Next one. This is strictly speaking, this is a quote, but it was just a really nice observation, and I think it goes unnoticed actually. Steve he's talking about his grandparents, and you could suck it away, which didn't feature in my top favorite quotes, and we will get to those shortly. But he says beef or lamb or whatever they're going to cook, and I love that observation about grandparents.
Yeah.
just about the choice meats. You've got beef or lamb, and it's just.
Steve does actually, out of all three of them, Steve is the best at telling anecdotes about his own life. And I'm not saying the ones on this particular episode were amazing or particularly funny, but he's very, very good at painting a picture of things that have happened here.
Yeah.
I can totally imagine, because obviously we've all seen Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Like, they are, like, I really imagine his grandparents like lying there, like the grandparents in that. Yeah. It's kind of funny, but my grandparents are a bit like that in the sense that they would cook meat for a long, long time. But yeah, Steve's very good at telling those anecdotes. What was I gonna say? Free chips. Miles just text me.
Free chips.
Text me that. There's just nothing else. For free chips.
Free.
I would say this is kind of could be a quote, but we often talk about what phrases and things do you use from the show. Many of the phrases I use from the show, I use for myself. They don't make sense to other people, but I say them out loud and I find them funny. But there are certain ones that are quite funny in situations like. So I'm actually stealing a line to be funny, and one of them is the United Nations Express. Are you on the United Nations Express? That's a really good line to use when you someone's happens to travel with German. That's happened like about 12 times in my life. I've used that line, and people always find it funny. So it's a funny line.
I've used often. I don't know if I've talked about this on the podcast before, but when I worked at The Economist as like an audio editor. And I was just like an intern there, and we were talking about Lego for some reason. It got into the subject, and I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna try something out here." and I said, "Do you know how Lego got its name?" And they went, "No." I said, "It's because some person's mum was playing." This girl's mum's child was playing with some Lego bricks, and she said, "Let go of them and come have your tea." I pushed that joke for as long as I could to see if they'd be that gullible enough to fall for it. And I just,
I love
the satisfaction that I took from that, just as a pure lie. And then I didn't have to explain it or anything after. I just thought, because they're going to think I'm an idiot, but I was like, no, it's funny. It's just funny.
I know, yeah, but it's funny that you picked that one, because that's like a rubbish. That's like out of all Carl's lines, that's like a rubbish one. Like,
it's one of my favourites though. That's because it's so.
Yeah, no. It means a lot to you. I know what you mean, because I've used lines from the from the office, but also from the podcast, where it doesn't make sense. I probably said that, like, it doesn't make in that way, and that doesn't make sense to people. But I just
my favourite is when he goes, do you know Mount Everest? When he got to the top, he says, "Got to have a rest," and he goes, "No, that's not true." But, well, we'll leave that.
Yeah.
And Ricky just said, "No, Carl. In what way?"
Yeah, in what? But
I just like Carl just moving off the subject, because he knows he's like, he probably thought of it and he thought that's quite interesting. Then thought about it again. He was like, no.
Yeah. We're kind of we're sort of moving slowly into favourite quotes, although they were from other.
I think so. Yeah.
We should have a little break, and then we'll come back with our favourite quote.
Gary, what are you going to do on your break?
I'm going to eat an apple.
Are you really?
I'm going to smoke a fish. What do you think I'm going to do? I'm going to go to the toilet, have a wee.
Okay, cool. We'll see you in a bit, folks. How have you been getting on with this week? What's been going on?
Good tangent. Yeah. Well, I've been obviously coming to terms with being in the latter half of the 30s now, and feeling up.
Gary recently turned 30s, the ripe old age of 36.
I did.
Late 30s, close to
I still
quarter of the way through your life.
I still could count as mid 30s, but I'm mid to late.
No.
Whereas 35, you're definitely mid 30s then.
Yeah.
36, you're creeping up there to 40, and yeah. So I'm fine about that.
I can actually imagine you at 40. It's not a big problem for me. I don't know how you feel about it, but it's not a problem for me.
Well, if you knew me when I was about 16, I was about 58 then, and I've only increased a year every year since. I'm about 78.
How have you been struggling with your? This is something I did want to talk about, like your evenings, as it were, because for me, I've really been struggling with I'm a morning person, as you know. I like getting up early. I've often texted you at like fucking 6:30 in the morning because I'm.
Yeah, can I just like you text me at 5:50 a few mornings ago.
This is what I mean. I can't.
5:50.
I know because
I'm up early, mate, but that's a bit.
I love mornings. I'm a morning person, right? But when it clocks to about 7 p.m, obviously now we can't go out, we can't leave our houses, can't do anything. You can sit in the park, but what the hell is that? I don't really want to do that, to be honest. But no. I would normally be going out to a cinema or a theatre or I don't know, or going to the pub with some mates, and I can't do anything like that. So it creeps up to that time, and I'm like, okay, cool. What now? I got really drunk on a Monday evening.
We've all done it, yeah.
Because, and I was talking to my sister on FaceTime for fucking ages till the wee hours, and I was just like, why am I doing what? I can't sleep at all. I just can't sleep when it's like this.
I think your story is similar to many people's stories. Certainly, a lot of people have been drinking, me included. I've had a few days where, not every day certainly, but a few days where literally I'm looking
Monday to Friday.
I am looking at that clock, waiting for it to tick over to midday because I won't drink it in the morning. And then the second it is, right, glass of wine, pour some water. So I've got the water and the wine. So. It's strange, to be honest. The way I've coped with my evenings is going to bed really early. I just go to bed. There's just nothing. I've usually got work and things to do.
I think that's really sad. I feel like we should be doing something.
Well, it's just put it in context. It's 10 weeks, might go on for 20 weeks overall of our lives. It's not the end of the world.
Oh no, I know.
Mars, I will say Mars is someone who really does go to the cinema, he goes to the theatre, he's often saying, oh yeah, I'm at the cinema theatre. Me, not so much, but yeah, so it's probably harder for you, whereas my evenings out would be with one or two people in a pub garden, so it wouldn't be a big night.
You prefer that, don't you? You like going out with just one person, you're not a group drinker.
One or two. Yeah, but hang on,
I'm the same. No,
let me just say this. A few times Mars and I have been meeting, and we meet for 6, 7, 8 hours, and we were drinking, and then he'll invite his friends, right, who I don't know, so they come along. He'll fall asleep, and then it'll leave me to speak to, which is fine. I don't mind speaking to friends, but I'm kind of
just to fall asleep.
You've done that many times, literally. He gets drunk, and especially when he's had wine.
I can't drink wine anymore, I tell you. I can't.
Well, you were just telling me the other week you were on wine.
Yeah, no, wine app, but not so much now. I've actually got. Do you know the problem is because I've gotten quite friendly with the news agent down the road, and I'm now that guy that just goes in and buys Magnas and Aspels. Yeah. And I don't want that to be the case. It's just my shopping basket is always the same. It's like lentil chips, straws, and Aspel cider, and or a beer. I'm having beer another day, and
Well, I tend to buy my wine from the supermarket, but my local newsagent as well. She knows the wine I have. She'll know, she knows what I have, which is a bit. It's a bit like it's a bit embarrassing, I guess. When I was a student and living in
That's okay.
when I was a student living in halls, I used to I ordered so many pizzas that I just rang up. He recognised my number because it was in those days you couldn't order online. So I rang up. He recognised my number, said, "Yeah, pepperoni, chicken, tomatoes, and whatever, pineapple, whatever I had. Yeah, you want that again? Yeah, okay." I didn't even have to order. He just knew my order, and he would come and feed it to me through my window because my window was ground floor. So it was like.
I think when I was a student, not when I was a student, when I broke up my partner, and I was going out with my mate, and every time we'd go to like Revenge in Brighton or wherever it was, and I'd always buy the same thing, and he knew exactly, and he was like always gave me that sort of like little nod. I'd buy like 4 Strongbow and a pack of 10 fags because you could get 10 fags back then, and it was always the same. And I just thought I do this like 3 times a week. Like, I feel ashamed about that. But you can't just go to, like, different news agents every fucking time, can you?
No. And I think it's more acceptable when you're a student. It does bring to mind, and I urge people to go and see it. I don't know if this is on YouTube just on its own, but Mitchell and Webb of the guy going into news. It's very reminiscent of what you've been saying and what we've been saying. So, very good sketch. But
we are going to move on because it's actually time for our top quotes.
Top quotes. So, Mars, start us off.
Number 8, Gary Forrestal. Stop bothering the Pope, he's busy.
Yeah, that's good. I always like, I don't know why, because I can totally imagine Ricky and Steve looking at each other when this line was said and actually really finding it funny. But please be upstanding for your chairman, Tom O'Connor.
At number 7, we've got you don't like wasting money, do you? And then Steve follows that up with, no, I don't like money. I don't like wasting money. No. Like, as if he wants to sort of say something, but that he knows that Ricky's kind of digging into his, like, tightness.
Yeah, he does that often. That's the risk you take when you receive a gift from me.
200 quid's worth of scratch cards.
I can so imagine Ricky doing that. Is so Ricky. I can so imagine him doing that.
And I think that's a very male thing as well. Like, not to, demonize or stereotype. Men classically, and my dad is included in this, do not bother baby with gift buying. Not interested.
No. Anyway, what's your next one?
And number 6, yours came in. Yours was donkey love.
Yeah, we're both on the same bit, aren't we? Like, we're on the same. Mine aren't in order of how good I find them, by the way. I just spread these in randomly. So my next one. This is I think my favourite of the whole episode, and it's very short. Is it? Wait.
Yeah.
When they said, "Oh, that's nice," and Steve goes, "Is it? Wait."
Wait. That's a good one. This one is from when they're discussing buying suits, and Steve goes, "Yeah, I know how good I look," and he just cuts Ricky off.
Yeah.
And then they have this brilliant like back and forth like chat, and this is an example of how they show off in front of Claire, because they're arguing back and forth about like who looked better in the suit. He says, "You look like a little Goggle-Eye little freak with a."
But Ricky, I know we're going to come on to this, but Ricky's so clever because he just in that chat, which is funny on its own. He says, he said you look like a lanky streak of piss, right? Which is like it's actually quite insulting because Steve does actually look. It's
forbearing as well, isn't it? It's a foretelling. Sorry.
But then he uses that. That's in his head later when because he does that's Freaken Goggle-Eye, which is Joe, and then. Yeah, so he says that's Freaken Goggle-Eye, which is it's just very funny. It's so like it's insulting to Germans, insulting to Steve, but then he uses what he'd said earlier, which he does this a lot. Ricky, he'll take a little thing he said earlier and build on it, kind of Harry Hill-esque. And then he goes, and actually Steve's even speaking. He even speaks over Steve to say this. That's lanky piss and streak. That's what I love that. It's just so insulting to Steve. That's probably my favourite quote, but
so I've got a few more. So
I've got a couple more as well.
So at number 4 I've got, because that must remind you of your Rent Boy days.
I thought you didn't like clips like that. Like I thought you hated. You usually say you hate them.
No. Anything that's
best
too
holiday
visceral,
I've ever had.
No, anything that's too visceral and too sexual, I don't like. But that's all right.
These are 2 quotes, but wrapped up in one. I like them both. They happen very soon after each other. Does her feet ever touch the ground now? Like on
yeah.
It's a good observation about Laura Heard. And then I'll give her an award. She's up the stairs like a greyhound.
Which actually, is a classic bit of like Ricky Gervais trivia, because Thora Heard features in the politics stand-up. He has a whole routine about that, which he obviously has ripped from the XFM shows.
But to be fair to Ricky, when you say he's ripped it from the XFM show,
it doesn't matter.
You can, in university work, you can plagiarize yourself, but it's not as serious as plagiarizing someone. He's basically plagiarizing himself, which is, he's not taking it from.
Do you know? It must be so much more like, obviously, if you know the XFM shows and if you've tracked the careers of all these people, you're going to pick up on this stuff. But if you're just a regular Joe and you're just like tuning in, as a lot of people like, his stand up, I've never been a fan of, like I keep saying, about, anything post, Derek.
I like some of his stand-up. No,
I like some of the stand-up, but no, obviously anything Derek, like Stuart Lee did a really good piece actually about Ricky. It was like
we saw it live together.
Oh yeah, no, he actually did a Guardian article about Ricky Gervais. It's interesting if you like Stuart Lee. At number 3, and I think you'll be surprised, but at number 3 I do have Das Freaken Goggle-Eye.
Okay, yeah, no, that's fair enough. I did mention it earlier, but I knew that basically we love those. We text.
I just think Ricky, how he comes up with that stuff so quickly.
That's lanky pissin streak is even cleverer. That's what I like. He says one that's funny, but then even funnier.
See the freaker. Look at this freaky Goggle-Eye.
One I really like. It happens right at the end. Is well, I didn't really care if you did enjoy it. Like he says, I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've enjoyed it, Claire. And she goes, yeah, I've enjoyed it actually. I wouldn't really care if you did enjoy it. So
also, Ricky has to have the last word because he just wants everyone to know that it's his show.
No, but it's fine. He does it.
I know, of course, it's tongue. So and number 2 is a combined one. It's free chips and also Ralph Littleton.
Ralph Littleton is in there.
I want to bring back Ralph Littleton as a comedy character. I think he was ignored.
Well, he's too close to Ralph Little.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I think that's why it must have been in Ricky's head because the
number 342.
Yeah, very very quick.
It's funny as well, isn't it? Because that's the Burger King that they go to. Oh no, they go to McDonald's, don't they? When they're trying to stuff hamburgers into Carl's face.
Yeah.
I've been to that one. I've been to both of those places actually.
Yeah. No, but I mean, do you want? Can I have your autograph or send it to me? Okay. My favourite of the whole episode is a bloody good meal as well.
My favourite of the episode.
I knew it was going to be your top, so I got in there first.
You have to say, like, a bloody good meal is probably Gary and I's most favourite. It's in the sort of top 10. We at the end when we've done all of the shows, right? We should do Gary and Miles's top 10 quotes that we use in day-to-day parlance
between each other.
Yeah. Because a bloody good meal is good when you're in a restaurant situation. It can be applied to anything, like an appliance or.
You've got to say it exactly like he says it. Bloody good meals, like bloody good meals. Like it's just a little cadence. Bloody good meal as well. But yeah, that's very fun. And I just do my last one. Well, marry it then.
Yeah.
That's another one. That's another one we do between each other. Like whenever one of us says, "Oh, I like that," I'll marry it then.
Which actually is kind of that's very Jay from the In-Betweeners actually now.
Yeah, probably, but that was just coincidence. No one took anything from anywhere. It could easily be I think people have probably been saying, "Oh, we'll marry it then," since about 1903.
Of course.
Joking. It's not a unique thing. Anyway, what's your last? I think you're on your last quote.
No, that's it.
Oh, you've got finished.
So
basically, we usually do. So we usually end on a feature, XFM in the community, where we just talk about your feedback that's been sent in. But we're actually going to do a separate show. It's only going to be like 10-15 minutes long, but there's quite a lot to get through this week. So we thought we'd do a separate show for it. So do tune in to our next show whenever it's released. I don't know when it'll be released, but and we will go through XFM in the community with you. But yeah, those are our favourite quotes for next week. What do you think about our quotes? Do you have any quotes that we didn't mention that you like? Any that we did mention that you don't like? Any feedback about the show is greatly appreciated. Please do get in touch. Miles is going to tell you now how you can get in touch, and then that'll be it for today.
You can get in touch with us on Twitter at Trout_D. Gary came up with the Twitter name, as you know, or trout.d@gmail.com. You can also get.
Hang on. No, I need to say this. You can't just. It's DE, because D could mean D.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Anyway, go on. Proceed.
Or you can get in touch with me on Instagram, and that's at Duchess_Purnell. Silly nickname from school. Don't ask questions.
Okay. And you can come round to my flat, 51 Argyle Road. No, actually, it is.
That's way too much information.
Has FLJS got in touch recently? I'm missing him.
Yeah, we'll talk about it soon.
Okay. Anyway, yeah. So that's.
Also, can I just say, we also do a splinter podcast called Dutch or Otherwise, and just to clear up any confusion that there were beforehand, because I've seen a little bit of confusion. Dutch or Otherwise is Gary and I's our kind of sister podcast where we discuss everything sort of related to our lives, I suppose, and our creative endeavors and our kind of
we often think like it sounds self-indulgent to say that, but it's not. We genuinely, I don't think it is, but we just talk more about our paths in life and how we're getting on, because Miles and I first met doing a radio show. We were put together by the head of the station, and we did Dutch or Otherwise, and that's kind of what it was. So it's like a little homage to that. So the Dutch one won't be for everyone. A lot of people will only like the ones we do with the podcast, which is fine, with the D-Trout spinners. But yeah, I think that's.
I'd always say, yeah, give them a go. You never know what you're gonna get. It's like a box of chocolates. Gary's got a little.
Don't tell us anything.
Anyway, thanks for listening, and do tune into the next sort of special episode where we'll be discussing some of your feedback. Thanks for listening, everyone. I've been Miles Purnell, with me and Mr.
Oh, do you want me to say it?
Yes, please.
I have to do that myself. Okay, Gary Forrest. I hate saying my name so much. Miles loves saying his name more than anything.
I don't.
You do. You love it, MP.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We have been the D-Trout Spinners. Like and subscribe. And like us, give us 4 stars upwards.
Yeah, thank you.
Ta-ta.